I'm recording. Hi, my name is Sabri, or Sabria Manning, and I am reading and studying the book by Alice A. Bailey, Esoteric Psychology, and I am sharing it publicly. The reason I'm reading this book is because it is a study of the self. As many people attribute to Socrates, know thyself. I just did a quick internet search and learned that that was not Socrates. It was actually written in the Temple of Delphi with two other maxims, which are nothing to excess and surety brings ruin. So a lot of people are very sure of themselves in certain things, and we really don't know much about the self because we've only explored the physical component of it. So for me personally, I again think that the way to really unlock your gifts and become a whole person is to study the full self, which does include the aspects of the esoteric, the unknown or the unseen, misunderstood. So the esoteric, the occult arts, aka what in conspiracy realms are considered the things that are not known by the many but are known by the few, which allow this disproportionate version of reality that we're seeing. Balance that out. Take the time to do the study. I also look at it as like, if you've ever been to a mechanic and you felt like you were cheated because you didn't really know what the expert knew, and you said, okay, I don't really think that I'm being told exactly what needs to be fixed here, but you're the expert, so I surrender my cognition, my understanding to you. But then once you learn how to fix that part of the car yourself, you feel empowered. Once you learn how to maintain something, that vehicle, that vessel yourself, you feel empowered. And many times they speak of our human body itself as a vessel, as a vehicle, and it is a vehicle for our consciousness, or our higher state of knowing, the essence that lives within you, that in esoteric we call God. It's the life force within you that just breathed for you just now and is continuing to breathe as you listen to me speak. You're not consciously doing it. There is a essence within you that is operating those most vital parts of your existence. And if we work to understand our mechanics, we can then live as that soul, as that essence, as that life force, and manifest our way out of a lot of the things that we're going through. I'm going to share some screens in a second and minimize this view. I'm not going to lie, I'm triggered. I'm really triggered right now. Today has been a trying day, but as Les Brown says, in one of my favorite all-time motivational speaks, he says, it's possible. You can live your dreams, and as the hard times come, and they will come, just know that they have not come to stay, they have just come to pass. And it's important that you focus on your dreams. So as I sit here and I'm triggered, I think, okay, what can I do that can be productive with this energy? I said, go work on your dream. And my dream is to live in a world where people have unlocked their consciousness, where they're aware of who they are and the power that's within them. And the way to do that is to first start with myself. So I'm doing this work. If you're following along, great. That's awesome. So anyways, getting to this book, Esoteric Psychology, Chapter 1, Section 1. I'm going to summarize what they talk about in this section so you kind of know what's in it for you. First, it goes over the 3 objectives in studying the rays. The first objective is to throw light on the fact that the rays are responsible for the different cycles that we've had in history. Each cycle that accounts for the growth and development of man from the stage of being a caveman up until eventually, which in this field we consider the goal of mankind, is the evolution into a perfected Son of God. Again, that God force being that power that is within you, that life force that is within you. So this study is going to show us how the rays are responsible for the growth over time that we have accomplished. Second, it's going to clarify our knowledge as to the nature of man. And Alice A. Bailey writes in this section that her intention is to add to modern psychology esoteric psychology, which deals with the soul or the self, and they talk about it as the ensouling entity within the form. So our body, this vessel, is an ensouling entity. It encapsulates and contains a life force that is able to think and conduct functions of our body automatically based on some different automatic responses, just like we were talking about with breathing. And it goes on to say that the energies that inform our personality is the missing piece of psychology today. So psychology, it says, understands or studies our behavior, understands neuroses, understands intellectual aptitude and potential, and even understands a little bit about instincts. But the field of psychology misses out because it doesn't go a step further into what informs those things. And this study of the 7 rays says that there's 7 divine energies from which all of our differentiated aspects are influenced by and which contribute to all those behaviors, all those neuroses, all of those things. And actually integrating that information makes you a whole person, which can then act upon life instead of having life act upon you. Which psychology would tell you certain things. If you have a mental condition, for example, you stand under that fact. And from here on forward, you have this condition. And that's just what it is. Study of yourself unlocks a little bit more to that equation, is the idea that we're kind of exploring here. Moving on, the energies that inform our personalities, the 7 rays, constitute the true nature of human beings and falls into 3 groups. It says the spirit within man, which is the 1, into the 3, which I mentioned in the other video. The 3 is mirroring after the prism or the triangle. So in the Trinity, in many religions, they talk about the Trinity. And so this is talking about how the light, the one stream of white light, flows into the prism, becomes that prism, and then is reflected out into 7 different color ray spectrums, which are for a visible eye to see. And second, that those 3 differentiate into the 7, like I was saying, and it carries in that light the 7 types of souls that we see on this plane. And then third, those 7 types of souls produce the 49. 7 times 7 is 49. 49 types of force, which express themselves through all the forms in the 3 worlds in the 4 kingdoms. I know this is a lot. I'm going to share my screen right here to kind of break that down just a little bit. Yeah, let's do that now. How do I do it? Just learning this. Okay, so right here is where I'm going to show this screen as I read. This is the publisher's website for the Alice A. Bailey books, luciustrust.org, the publisher. Here again on universaldharma.com is where I found a printable poster that outlines the 7 rays and those planes. There's a quick view of that right here. Those first 3 rays are what we're talking about when the prism is reflected, when life force and that source energy is reflected through this triangle, this triad, first ray, second ray, third ray energy. The will, the love, and the intellect, then it further differentiates itself and creates the full 7 spectrum. We have these different colors representing each of the rays. They relate to different chakras, etc. This chart gives us the description and master of them, negative qualities and qualities to develop in order to become a whole being or a being who knows itself and those influences which act upon it. This little clip here is on my Truth Seekers playlist on this channel. I'm going to play a little bit of this. It's called Wisdom Bites and the 7 Rays. Maybe I can explain it a little better than I am, if there's any confusion. I listen to things at 1.5 speed, so excuse this being a little sped up, but my brain has to takes information kind of quickly. I got a lot to do. So if you do go back to this on my channel and watch it in normal speed, it'll be a little less fast, but here we go.
Though the esoteric philosophy would say that all of creation is actually the one life and that this one life is manifesting as the many, and that there are many divisions of that many as it manifests into an infinite variety and diversity. There are said to be 7 fundamental qualities that arise from that. A simple analogy would be to look at the idea of God as white light. Now, when we take white light and we project it through a prism, we see that it fragments itself into 7 colors of the visible spectrum. By using the law of analogy, we can see the same thing playing out. The one life, the light of God, the light of the one life, manifests in and as cosmos, and in the process, it becomes prismatic, and it divides itself into 7 colors, 7 qualities, 7 states of consciousness, and that is what we call the rays. Those 7 qualities are equal in their importance to the one life, and that as they manifest, they then intersect and interface and create different mixtures of density of one over another, and ultimately it leads to the great diversity and manifestation that we have today. These 7 qualities of consciousness are the foundation of everything in manifestation, and that they are uniquely expressive of qualities of life, qualities of consciousness, and in a way, they are viewed as beings in their own right.
So one of the beautiful things about studying the rays is it also can become immediately and deeply personal, because each of our souls is governed and colored by one of these particular ray energies. And every ray energy has a color, has a note, has a mantram, has names attached to it that stream into particular souls. And so we are resonant with and vibrate in this energy of one of the rays, which is, in esoteric astrology, is deeply important to know. Our rising sign is fundamental, and the soul ray is fundamental as we begin to understand our full spiritual structure. So we do want to know our soul ray, and that is fundamental. But what will be most obvious initially will be the personality ray. When we meet somebody, we'll be like, okay, I can sense the 3rd ray there. That's what will come up first, because it's what is demonstrated. The soul ray, of course, is more subtle and might take more time to deduce within ourselves and within another.
To further highlight that, one more feature needs to be understood. As the 1 becomes the 7, it first becomes 3 before becoming the 7. The 1 becomes the 3, becomes the 7. And then the infinite number of diversities that arise from that. Think of white light, as I said, going through a prism, but a prism is always going to manifest as a triangle, and that you're projecting light through a triangle of prismatic glass, and that causes the division of the light into 7 colors of the visible spectrum. So in that simple analogy that I've given you, you have the 1, the white light, the 3, the prism, and the resultant 7 rays that come through as the light passes through that prism. So the analogy is very useful in just getting a sense of the underpinning of how important the 3 is, but even more so now, as it'll give us an understanding of where does the 7 come from? Where does it emerge out of? And each of these 7 rays is, in a way, a deity in its own right, a massive life force, and each has a piece to play in the evolution of all things.
Chillin'. All right, and going back to how it emphasizes that the 1 and the 3 and the 7 and the 3 is vital, back here really quickly at the poster, we look at the 1st ray, 2nd ray, and 3rd ray. 1st ray is considered the father aspect, 2nd is the son, and 3rd is the mother. This is resonant in many religions. I'm jumping over to this website, helozoics.org, giving them some credit. Here is what they have here. It's an offering up of helozoics. They attempt to present and illustrate information regarding our physical and metaphysical anatomy and associated indications. The core of the system considered here has been attributed to Pythagoras. As restored, it was newly added to the teachings in the last quarter of the 20th century. And here's a little table of contents of the website. We're going to jump over to the cosmic physical plane and look at the lotus a little later, because what I like about this site is someone has done some great work on really outlining and charting and drawing up some of what we're talking about here in a visual form so that you can see it. An example here, this is from one of the books, actually, one of the Bailey books. This is the logos of a solar system. Just want to show this one to show that trinity here, where it talks about the triangle, the prism that light source is first reflected into this trinity, the Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost, Shiva, Vishnu, and Brahma in Hindu religion. Over here, we can look at it as the unmanifest, spirit, matter, and then creative wisdom. Over here, it shows existence, bliss, and intelligence, and just seeing how that overlaps with this poster, how the first ray is the will or the power force, second is our love or wisdom force, and third is active intelligence in the Bailey books, or mathematically exact activity here. And they each have their strengths, ways to develop them, and negative qualities. I summarized this in another video that came just before it if you want to check out the playlist on that. But going back to my notes here on what this chapter tells us, the 7 types of souls, or these 7 rays that produce the 49, it expresses itself through all forms in the 3 worlds and the 4 kingdoms. And when Bailey talks about the 4 kingdoms, here we're talking about, and this is another chart from Helizoics, we're talking about down here, pointing at the screen, this, the mineral kingdom, the vegetable kingdom, the animal kingdom, and here the human kingdom. And this represents a rising of consciousness through the physical. And we here in the 4th kingdom, the human kingdom, and it shows a ring pass knot here as well before we expand up beyond this. Another example here on sensibility. This is a little essay on it showing the development rising up, the mineral kingdom, vegetable, and then we have the animal and the human kingdom. Looking at this little chart here, what they're representing as far as mankind. Again, the 7 rays, it says, will help us to understand how throughout the cycles in history, man has grown from the stage of the caveman into what is shown, depicted here as a perfected Son of God. You'll see this light illumined above the head. This is consciousness, often described as Christ consciousness, Christed on consciousness, which is a title associated to the person who knows themselves and has unlocked their gifts and their powers. So we don't stand under these false realms and paradigms, false teachings and practices of this paradigm, of this realm. I think that's all I have for this section. We'll get to some of that other stuff in a second. But back to wrap up the outline. The 3rd thing that we learn, or are going to learn from the study of the rays, is how to have a practical method of analysis in 2 things: understanding ourselves as ensouling entities and arriving at a wiser comprehension of our fellow men. Studying the self in this way, like the Bailey, we're talking about the occult, we're learning about the soul, we're learning about astrology, which is a no-no in certain religions because they were manipulated by individuals who sought to control people through the teachings of religion rather than give them the lessons and the fruit in the story of Christ, for example. So learning about our astrology chart, learning about our psychological makeup, all kinds of things help us learn about the opportunities that are available to us, limitations, our vocational aptitudes, our true values and strength, where you should be on your path, what you should be working towards versus what you could be like hitting brick walls because you're just not necessarily in your lane based on your blueprint of which your birth chart, etc. is. And like the lady in that clip was saying, how we have, if we understand our rising sign and our birth chart, it helps us a lot, as well as learning our soul ray. So again, this offers and proposes that we can then deal more intelligently with ourselves and our children and with our friends and our associates, understanding ourselves, and then imagine understanding another person. Like she said, oh, I can see that you're coming from 3rd ray here, so I interact with you just a little differently because I understand myself, and then what's more is I can now understand you a little bit better too, and how we can then better work together and what kinds of people are meant to work together because we are activated and working off of these different rays. Fascinating stuff. And then the quote from this section I really loved was, the more truly you live as a soul, the more surely you will comprehend that which may be imparted in these teachings. And an aim and objective for the occultists studying this is to be consciousness itself and to so identify with the soul, that life force within us, that consciousness of all else drops away. All right, I'm going to go ahead and start reading. Again, this is the book where you can access this for free on the publisher's website, beginning here with the 3 objectives in studying the rays. I hope that I can keep this up with what I'm reading. I'm just going to stop it right here. Hold on, we're going to get there. Chapter 1, Introductory Remarks. The 3 objectives in studying the rays. The study of the rays and a true and deep comprehension of the inner significance of the teaching will do for us 3 things. A, it will throw much light upon the times and cycles in the unfolding panorama of history. In the last analysis, history is an account of the growth and development of man from the stage of the caveman, with his consciousness centered in his animal life, up to the present time wherein the human consciousness is steadily becoming more inclusive and mental, and so on and up to the stage of a perfected Son of God. It is an account of the apprehension by man of the creative ideas which have molded the race and are establishing its destiny. It gives us a dramatic picture of the progress of those souls who are carried in or out of manifestation by the appearance or disappearance of a ray. We shall find as we study that words will greatly handicap our expression of the realities involved, and we must endeavor to penetrate beneath the surface meaning to the esoteric structure of truth. These rays are in constant movement and circulation and demonstrate an activity which is progressive and cyclic and evidences increasing momentum. They are dominant at one time and quiescent at another. And according to the particular ray which is making its presence felt at any particular time, so will be the quality of the civilization, the type of forms which will make their appearance in the kingdoms of nature, and the consequent stage of awareness, or state of consciousness, of the human beings who are carried into form life in that particular era. So the ray that's dominant at any time in history will dictate the types of forms, human beings that incarnate into that specific era. So if you think of the big change agents or leaders or teachers of a specific time that have helped to shift historically, when we have like the Golden Age, Enlightenment, different eras where humanity has taken a giant leap forward, there's beings that are directed on certain of these rays that incarnate at a particular time in order to aid that movement. I think we're still here. Bear with me, this is going to be a little imperfect. These embodied lives, again in all 4 kingdoms, will be responsive to the particular vibration, quality, coloring, and nature of the ray in question. The ray in manifestation will affect potently the 3 bodies which constitute the personality of the man, and the influence of the ray will produce changes in the mind content and the emotional nature of the man, and determine the caliber of the physical body. I am aware, therefore, that in giving out this relatively new teaching upon the rays, I may, in my endeavor to shed fresh light, temporarily increase the complexity of the subject. But as experiment is made, as people are studied in the laboratories of the psychologists and the psychoanalysts in connection with their ray indications, and as the newer sciences come into wise use in their proper sphere, we shall gain much, and the teaching will find corroboration. We shall see emerging a new approach to the ancient truths and a new mode of investigating humanity. In the meantime, let us concentrate upon the clear enunciation of the truth anent the rays, and seek to tabulate, outline, and indicate their nature, purpose, and effects. The 7 rays, being cyclic in appearance, have continuously passed in and out of manifestation, and have thus left their mark down the ages upon mankind, and therefore hold the clue to any true historical survey. Such a survey still remains to be made. B. A second result of the study of the rays will be to clarify our knowledge as to the nature of man. Modern psychology, experimental and academic, has done much to gather information as to how a man functions, what is the nature of his reactions, the caliber of his thought apparatus, and the quality of his physical mechanism, the mode of his thinking, and the sum total of complexes, psychoses, neuroses, instincts, intuitions, and intellectual fixations, which he undoubtedly is. Medical psychology has also given us much, and we have learnt that the human being is entirely conditioned by his instrument of expression and can express no more than his nervous system, brain, and glands permit. Trying to see where we are up here. Okay, right here. We find, however, that some of the theories, even the best proven, break down given varying conditions. The field covered by psychology today is so vast, its schools so many and varied, and its terminology so cumbersome, that I can make no attempt to deal with it here. The indebtedness of the world to the trained psychologist cannot be estimated, but unless there is a key idea interjected into the whole field of thought, it will fall of its own weight and produce, as it is already producing, problems, complexes, and diseases of the mind, which are direct results of its own methods. So this right here is exactly enumerating how psychology right now isn't really getting the whole job done. It's diagnosing and creating all of these problems for what we see the human problem to be, to understand what's wrong with humanity. Oh, you've got this going on, you've got that problem. Oh, your environment has contributed to this, or oh, an Oedipus complex has you in an unhealthy, enamored relationship with your mother, and you don't understand that there's aspects to that dynamic that are actually harmful to you, whatever it may be. Psychology gives us that. Modern psychology gives us that. Esoteric psychology gives us the gnosis of what has spilled into your consciousness that created this, the blueprint for why you would have interjected your spirit into a form with all of these dynamics going on, and what your unique purpose was to unlock and awaken within that form and serve from that unique perspective, which only you can serve from because you've lived that life, that perspective, this divided consciousness from the 1 to the 3 to the 7 to the many for a purpose. It's evolution. Your plight is not just some random occurrence. There's an actual method to the madness. And esoteric psychology is saying that it can pick up where modern psychology has left us with all of these just different diagnoses, I guess you could say. Still right up here at the top. I'll read that again. The knowledge we now have of how men work on the physical plane as integrated personalities and of how they can be expected to work given certain conditions is broad and sound. I don't know if that's where I left off. Yeah, whatever. We're just gonna keep going. Is broad and sound, and the wideness of its grasp can be somewhat gauged if we compare what we know today with what was known 150 years ago. But it has been largely based upon a study of the abnormal and upon the form aspect, this latter being the true scientific method, and is therefore limited and circumscribed when it is put to the test in the last analysis and in the light of the undoubtedly existent supernormal. So again, we're emphasizing our view on humanity by studying everything that's abnormal. Oh, this is an abnormality of this human, and therefore this is why their life is what it is, and it's set in that way. This is saying that that view is limited because when it's put to the test in the last analysis, if we actually study and examine an awakened or enlightened conscious being, which is where we're moving towards, we see superhuman. We see the supernormal, people who are spontaneously healing themselves, people who are living to overcome their circumstances or whatever abnormalities they've been, allotted in life, whatever circumstance that psychology would tell us is just the way that it has to be. Anyways, what I seek to do and the contribution I seek to make to the subject, this is the author speaking here, have to do with the emphasis we shall lay upon the nature of the integrating principle found within all coherent forms and on that which can, for lack of a better word, be called the soul itself. Soul or self, we're right here. This principle, which informs the body nature, and expresses its reactions through the emotional and mental states, is of course recognized by many schools of psychology, but remains nevertheless an unknown and undefinable quantity. They find it impossible to discover its origin. They know not what it is, whether or not it is an informing entity, detached and separate from the body nature. They question whether it is an integrated, energetic sum total brought into existence through the fusion of the body cells, and therefore through the process of evolution, constituting a thinking, feeling entity, or whether it is no more than the aggregated life and consciousness of the cells themselves. The above generalization, which will serve our purpose and will cover the general proposition, it will appear as we study that the energies which inform the personalities and which constitute the nature of human being fall naturally into three groups. Oh, slow down there, lady. 1, those energies which we call the spirits in men. You note here the utter superficiality of that phrase. It is meaningless and misleading. Spirit is one, but within the essential unity, the points of fire or the divine sparks can be seen and noted. These unities within the unity are colored by and react qualitatively to 3 types of energy. For it is scientifically true and a spiritual fact in nature that God is the 3 in 1 and the 1 in 3. The spirit of man came into incarnation along a line of force emanating from one or other of these 3 streams, which form one stream emanating from the Most High. Again, this is referring back to that refraction of light, that one source of light, that one unified white ray of light is refracted into the prism, which has 3 corners, 3 essences, 3 essential forces that then are reflected out to what the visible eye can see in the light spectrum as these 7 rays. 2, the streams of energy differentiate into a major 3, yet remain one stream. This is an occult fact worthy of the deepest meditation. In their turn, they differentiate into 7 streams which carry into the light, as it is called, the 7 types of souls. It is with these 7 that we shall deal. Number 3, the energies into which the 3 distribute themselves, thus becoming 7 in their turn, produce the 49 types of force which express themselves through all the forms in the 3 worlds and the 4 kingdoms in nature. You have therefore A, 3 monadic groups of energies. The essential unity expresses through these 3 the qualities of will, love, and intelligence. Those are the first 3 rays, the rays of aspect. Will, love, and intelligence. The first triple splitting off of that divine energy. B, 7 groups of energies which are the medium through which the 3 major groups express the divine qualities. And C, 49 groups of forces to which all forms respond and which constitute the body of expression for the 7, who in their turn are reflections of the 3 divine qualities. In some mysterious ways, therefore, the differentiations which manifest in nature are found in the realm of quality and not in the realm of reality. It is with the 7 groups of souls or soul energies that we shall deal, and with the threefold forms in the 4th kingdom of nature which they create, and through which they have to express the quality of their ray group and the energy of that one of the 3 essential groups to which their soul ray is related. Again, going back to that video clip where that lady said it's so important that we know our rising sign and our soul ray. As we learn to unlock our consciousness and we live as a soul, we need to understand what ray our soul is living from. And she said it's much easier to first identify which ray our personality or our human state of consciousness is on. And it's going to be driven by, again, this chart here. Yeah, not there. Here. First ray. Are you operating on a will or power center, the ray? Are you very much concerned with projecting the power of your divinity, of being a destroyer, a penetrative force? Focus on the plan, being very strong and courageous and steadfast and all of this stuff, fearlessness, is that where you are? Do you assert your will and power in most situations to the negative qualities of being very prideful and rigid or controlling? Do you operate from the second ray, primarily, of love and wisdom, the sun aspect? Is it the ray of comprehensive reason and the heart of all, revealing the path of love, unifying, attractive power, inclusiveness, patience, calmness, endurance, love of truth, or acting in the negative qualities of this ray, which is being very dogmatic, cold, having self-pity, being indifferent to others, being very vague and contempt of other people's mental limitations? Do you have a messiah complex? Do you think that you can save everybody before you save yourself? Do you look at yourself? Are you studying yourself? Or are you primarily of the third ray of active intelligence, the mother aspect? The clear light of the mind, being broad-minded, sincere in your purpose, loving discrimination, having an abstract mind, also being patient and having a philosophic aptitude? Are you acting from the negative aspects of the third ray as your primary ray, being intellectually prideful, very busy, and so you're unfocused and scattered, you're inaccurate in a lot of your details, you're absent-minded, you are too critical of other things, and you don't have that open mind, which is over here outlined, being abstract-minded? Are you closed and selfish in that way? Do you deviously manipulate people? Do you weave petty concerns? This is all very interesting, Which ray is your primary dominant ray that you're acting from in that first triplicity and splitting up into these rays of aspect? We usually have about 3 rays going on, as it said in the first part in the introduction of this book, because we have our personality is being triggered by or influenced by a ray. Then we have our emotional body or physical, and then you have the soul ray, all operating from different aspects of these 7 rays, which we'll get into. We're still here. We shall therefore, if possible, endeavor to add to modern psychology and enrich its content with that esoteric psychology which deals with the soul or self, the ensouling entity within the form. And C, the third effect of the study of these rays should be twofold. Not only shall we understand somewhat the inner side of history, not only shall we gain an idea of the divine qualities emerging from the 3 aspects and determining the forms of expression on the physical plane, but we shall have a practical method of analysis whereby we can arrive at a right understanding of ourselves as ensouling entities and at a wiser comprehension of our fellow men. When, through our study, we ascertain, for instance, that the tendency of our soul ray is that of will or power, but that the ray governing the personality is that of devotion, we can more truly gauge our opportunity, our capacities, and our limitations, we can more justly determine our vocation and service, our assets and our debits, our true value and strength. When we can add to that knowledge an analysis which enables us to realize that the physical body is reacting preeminently to the soul ray, whilst the emotional body is under the influence of the personality ray, which is historically in manifestation at the time, we are then in a position to gauge our particular problem with judgment. We can then deal more intelligently with ourselves, with our children, and with our friends and associates. We shall find ourselves able to cooperate more wisely with the plan as it is seeking expression at any particular time. It is a platitude to say that the true meaning of psychology is the word of the soul. It is the sound producing an effect in matter which a particular ray may make. This is in some ways a difficult way of expressing it, but if it is realized that each of the 7 rays emits its own sound, and in doing so sets in motion those forces which must work in unison with it, the entire question of a man's free will, of his eternal destiny, and of his power to be self-assertive comes up for solution. These questions we shall seek to answer as we proceed. How powerful is that?